Scherzer underwent surgery, according to Jeff Passan, to repair a herniated disc in his back. He is set to return around the All-Star break in line with Jacob deGrom and Tyler Mahle. So that kind of takes us right into playing GM for the Texas Rangers. Before I give you the lowdown and how much space they have to work with before the competitive balance tax and, position by position, what they look like, Scherzer being out creates maybe the weirdest starting rotation look, because on opening day, this thing looks like Eovaldi, John Gray, Andrew Heaney, Dane Dunning, and then like Owen White. But then after the All-Star break, it could be deGrom, Scherzer, Eovaldi, Mahle, John Gray. What a
Yeah.
world.
I think it's survive the first half and then get going in the second half. I think that's obviously going to be the plan, but I am interested to see if they go get one more arm. I know they've got some unique situations with, I mean, they're obviously willing to spend, but unique situation with where they're at financially. We're going to talk about that, in the, playing GM aspect of it, how close they are to the tax threshold, all that good stuff. But I feel like they got to go get one more safety blanket arm.
Yeah.
But the problem is you do that, and then you get all these guys back, and now you have money committed to a player that you can't even really find a spot for. I think that would be a good problem to have, and you can cross that bridge when you get there, and you can always move an arm or two. So I do wonder if they're going to go out and get maybe one more vet arm that will be available, because Owen White took a step back last year stuff wise.
Yeah.
And John Gray, Eovaldi, Heaney, Dunning, you can kind of get by with that. But if Dunning takes a step back, then you really got to get creative. So I look at their farm system. You hope Jack Leiter can maybe put it together, and he looked really, I think, a lot better in the second half of the season. So maybe there's a world where Leiter, is able to come up and give you kind of short 5 and dive type starts. But I just don't see that happening in the first half when they need it most.
That's the thing. Like if it was the second half and they just needed to survive until September 15th, different story. I trust that Jack Leiter can get there. But out of spring training for the first 3 months of the season, that's a really tall ask for that guy.
Especially when he's finally started to build momentum again as a pro. Like you don't want to just throw him into the fire. So yeah, I do think they need to potentially look for one more arm, so we can lead into that. But I mean, they're in a good spot overall. There's not much that needs to be changed.
Yeah, let's take care of the offense because flawless. Catching tandem of Jonah Heim. Real quick, let me just run through kind of what they've done so far and then where they're at in terms of financial leeway. What they have done so far, they lost Jordan Montgomery, Aroldis Chapman, Mitch Garver, Robbie Grossman, Travis Jankowski, Matt Bush, Austin Hedges, Martin Perez. Martin Perez might be an option, by the way. Moves so far. They signed Kirby Yates to 1 year for $4.5 million. So that bolsters kind of the setup role. They took Carson Coleman in the Rule 5 draft, who's working his way back from an elbow issue. Then they signed Tyler Mahle 2 for $22. They're at $226 million in terms of total payroll when you account for arbitration estimates and pre-arb estimates. So that puts them about $11 million shy of the projected competitive balance tax at 237. So they're at 226. They've got 11 mil. It seems like they're willing to pay the penalty. But let's go position by position. Offensively, I think nothing needs to be done. Jonah Heim and Sam Huff as the catching tandem. How do you feel about Sam Huff as the backup catcher?
He's fine enough as a backup. I'd have to see a little bit more about the defense, but I think it's good enough. He can run into the baseballs. Like, that's fine. Jonah Heim's going to be catching most of the games.
He can 500-foot homer run into baseballs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's fine. Like, I'll take that out of my backup. And he had a decent 21 games with them. Like, he's going to strike out 38% of the time. That's fine.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good catching tandem overall.
First base, Nathaniel Lowe, and then Blaine Crim is still on the roster. And he's a 40-man guy. He probably won't break camp, but he serves as a backup first base option. Great, no problems there. Second base, Marcus Semien. It's not like he needs a backup. He plays every day already, but you've got Ezekiel Duran, Jonathan Ornelas, Justin Foscue that you can turn to. Third base, Josh Young. Duran is the backup. Excellent. Shortstop, Corey Seager. Ornelas and Duran is the backup. Excellent. Outfield starting trio as it stands right now of Evan Carter, Leody Taveras, Adolis Garcia. That can change during spring training. There's one guy that can force himself into that fold and push Leody into that fourth spot, and it's Wyatt Langford. And we talked about that a couple weeks ago Bruce Bochy said he and Chris Young are aligned that this guy is going to go in an open competition, and if he performs, he can make the roster on opening day, and he can start on opening day. So if it's Carter, Langford, Adolis, is it Carter in left, Langford in center, Adolis in right, or do you flip flop Carter to put him in center and then Langford in left?
So I think you got to put Langford in the corner for sure. Obviously, Carter could probably play a good center field. Obviously, Leote's kind of been that defensive guy for them for a while, and he plays probably the best center field. So the interesting thing for me is I think you could have a Wyatt Langford make the team, and you have a rotation here of outfielders because there's two things that I'm not worried about, but like there's two unprovens, I think, or two variables in this offense that I think above most of the others because you feel pretty confident that Semion's going to be Semien, Seager's going to be Seager, Garcia's going to be Garcia. Josh Young, even at this point, I think is kind of showed enough that he's going to be fine next year, and same with Lowe and Heim, et cetera. Evan Carter, we got to see what he's going to do over the course of an entire season. I think he showed some really good things, but we've got to see him do it over the course of an entire season to just see if he's an everyday player. The one thing we know that he can't do at this point is hit lefties. And obviously, I think he's a really, really good player. I think he's going to have a really nice season and probably has a great shot at winning Rookie of the Year. He's going to be an everyday player for a very long time and make a bunch of all-star games, or at least a handful. My thing is, if it doesn't all come together for a 21-year-old, next year, the way that it looked in a flash, then all of a sudden, I mean, a win now team, they got to start getting creative. But even let's say Carter's good against righties. You have Leote, who, I mean, at the end of the day, is I don't think ever really had a league average offensive season. So if he drops off a little bit offensively, Leote kind of gets relegated to that fourth outfield role. You could have Langford in a corner, but even if you wanted to play Leote, you could have Langford taking those left on left at bats from Carter because again, he has not done it at all professionally. I mean, at the big league level and in the minors, he really struggled. So Langford already gets a chunk of ABs there. Then he could also get ABs when you just like his matchup better than Leote being in there. So then you shift Carter into center. And then even if you wanted to have an outfield with those guys, you could put Duran on the bench and put Langford at DH. So there's a lot of different ways where I think you can mix and match here. And even if Langford doesn't have a clear-cut spot on roster resource, he could be playing 5 times a week. He takes DH at bats. He basically takes at bats from everybody in the outfield / DH other than Adolis, who would just stays in right.
Yes.
I think you could find a lot of at bats for that guy, even if he's not starting on opening day right away. And I think that's why they're ultimately going to have him on the roster. And I like his bat way more than Leote's even going into next year. And I think he could be a better offensive option over 162 than Evan Carter in terms of the power and the field to hit kind of blended together.
Yeah, and I'm speaking for you right now, but Adolis's bat isn't bad. Like you don't dislike Adolis or not Adolis,
or Leote.
Leote Taveras. Like you don't dislike Leote Taveras as a contributor to the Texas Rangers. It's just Langford is that good already, so he's going to be an upgrade. Leote is immediately the best fourth outfielder in baseball if they do go with that 3-person outfield rotation and then relegate Leote to the bench. But you still have Josh H. Smith. You still have Dustin Harris on the way up. JP Martinez had a great year, and I know he's 27, 28 years old, but he swiped 38 bags in like 70 games. So there are so many pieces offensively. You don't need to touch this offense. The pitching is where you're going to have to touch it. And we ran through the rotation. I think they're probably looking for a 1-year deal guy that is going to be healthy right away. And a lot of the 1-year deal guys that I think could make sense are not going to be healthy right away. Like Vince Velasquez is not healthy. Vince Velasquez makes a lot of sense as a 1-year deal, but this might just be a wash year. And then, he gets healthy, works on his own, and then he resigns in 2025. I think your guy Uwasawa makes a lot of sense here. And the Rangers do have a track record of doing this, not just with Yu Darvish, but with Kohei Arihara too. Like they're willing to go tap into that, unknown market. And I think Naoki Uwasawa would be a good fit because you know that he's going to come over. You know that he can throw 6 innings. And that's what you need for 3 months. And it's a relatively cheap price point because there's so much unknown and he doesn't throw 98.
Yeah. No, I mean, he might be the guy that we end up throwing around a lot this year. Like that's the name we move around, but he's kind of the perfect guy to, as you mentioned, to kind of spell some of these other arms. It's just a totally different look. It's more, I think he could be a better version of kind of what they got. I mean, maybe not a better version. I think he could be exactly what they got from Dane Dunning last year, and maybe a
Yeah.
better version of what they get this year from Dunning. I think he's a good fit. I think that's a really interesting arm to mix in there. I would have loved a Severino type on a 1 year, prove it.
Yeah.
Again, if that's your 5, that's fine. And I'm looking at some other arms that could be kind of 1 year candidates. Hyunjin Ryu could be an interesting one, just as a guy that you can throw in there. Frankie Montas on a prove it deal would be interesting as well, right? What better situation to be on a prove it deal than the defending champion? So they might be able to get away with not shelling out the biggest deal, but maybe matching whatever the best offer is. Probably going to pick them. So something like that, I could see any of those arms being of interest. Maybe even a James Paxton, but I think he's going to command multiple years after how he looked last year. But there's some injury concern there. There's enough arms and options where I think they could identify a 1 year guy and get him at their price point, which is pretty much all they need to do. And yeah, I think the most important thing here is that they have Langford in there on opening day. I really think he could be a difference maker, and they should have him, have the time to get acclimated. But I also think Carson Coleman, if healthy, and I think he's going to be healthy, is a really good bullpen arm that can throw multiple innings for them and plug and play. I loved that Rule 5 selection for them, a guy that just got a ridiculous amount of whiff on his fastball when he was healthy.
Yeah.
So I kind of like where this bullpen's starting to be at. I think it's not. It really depends what they get from Spores in the regular season, and I think that's the question. But rotationally, if they go get any Uwasawa, Ryu, any of those guys, I feel pretty good about it. Overall.
And nobody should have more confidence than Josh Spores coming into this year. Like, this guy proved his worth in the postseason, and now it's a matter of doing it over 162 when you're not on Fox every night. And it's Leclerc, Spores, Yates, Brock Burke, Grant Anderson. You got Antoine Kelly kind of waiting in the wings. He's a 40-man ad. Carson Coleman, like you mentioned. If they want to stay close to the tax or under the tax, you don't have to do anything. If they want to go over the tax and get noticeably better, Hader's the perfect fit. And you just move everybody forward an inning. So Hader turns into the closer, Leclerc is the ninth inning or is the eighth inning guy, Spores is the seventh inning guy, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
They're paying Yates
and I love
$4.5
that.
Yeah.
I love that because Leclerc, like, he was great last year, and I know he even came through in the postseason. But there's something about the way he gets his, like, the saves, and it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride. He walks guys. He's not as many swings and misses as you'd think. I just like him a lot more as a setup guy, and I like Spores obviously as a setup guy. If they went out and got a closer, that'd be fantastic. But I don't see them shelling out that kind of money for Hader. Maybe they could backload it a little bit. I don't know. Probably unlikely, and that's why I think they ended up taking a reliever arm in the Rule 5. Like, most teams that are this good don't usually make Rule 5 selections. Generally, you never know. They might really like a guy, and this might have been one of those cases. But yeah, it's an interesting situation here where I don't think they spend much more money. I also was looking at it like, could they make a trade, dude? Because they do have a unique situation here where Duran is kind of being, I think, underutilized if he is on your bench, because that's a guy, I know he struggled in the second half, but he can play several positions, key positions too, shortstop, center field, all over the infield. He can run a little bit. He has some power. He's only 24. Like, that could be a trade chip for you. And you got teams out there that don't even have a respectable shortstop for next year. Like, Duran could start at shortstop for the Marlins next year, right?
Yeah.
And like, if you could put together a deal and go get one Marlins arms, why not consider that? The Marlins need a shortstop. Duran, and you could play around, look at different options. Duran, Josh H. Smith, whoever else. Try to put together a package with some prospects as well. And even an Edward Cabrera, or I don't know which arm the Marlins are most willing to part with, but clearly they're open to almost any of them. From what I understand, the Marlins, if they make a trade, it's going to be for prospects or young guys. They're not trying to just push right back to the playoffs. I could see like a Justin Foscue, who's also kind of blocked and stuck there in AAA. There's a few different guys that I think could be of help to the Marlins, but I see Duran in a swap for an arm that would be cheap for them. Makes a lot of sense.
Can I ask you, so Tanner Scott has one more year of control. Tanner Scott's coming off a great year. What do you think it costs for Tanner Scott? Jonathan Ornelas?
I think more. I think he was one of the best relievers in the sport last year. I was surprised he wasn't nominated for reliever of the year, to be honest. He had better numbers than Emmanuel Clase and other guys. I think it would be.
You think it's Ezekiel Duran?
Yeah, I honestly do. If the Marlins have to attach a prospect, like sure, but the way Durant kind of faded, the way he's kind of stuck here, I think that Scott in a solid prospect should be able to potentially get you Ezekiel Durant. I don't think that's crazy.
You want to do it? You want to do Duran for Tanner Scott just for the hypothetical?
Kind of like that. Yeah,
Kind of like it too. Let's run
we can
through.
throw in a prospect. We can throw in
Yeah,
a
sure.
prospect.
But like that
Yeah.
prospect's not going to be on the opening day roster. I want to run through what the Rangers opening day roster looks like with these moves right now. So starting lineup, Heim catching, Lowe at first, Semien at second, Seager at short, Young at third. You're going to have Carter in left. We'll call it Tavares in center, Adolis in right, Wyatt Langford is your DH. Your bench would be Sam Huff, Jonathan Ornelas, Josh H. Smith, and JP Martinez. Your starting rotation is going to be Nathan Eovaldi, John Gray, Andrew Heaney, Dane Dunning, Hyunjin Ryu. Let's give him Ryu with DeGrom due back half of the season, Malley due back at the All-Star break, and Scherzer due back at the All-Star break. And then the bullpen turns into Tanner Scott as your closer, Jose Leclerc is your setup guy, Josh Spores is your seventh inning guy, and then Kirby Yates, Brock Burke, Grant Anderson, Jonathan Hernandez as the guys that round it out. I think that team is better than the one that just won the World Series.
Yeah, I do too. And it could even get better and better and better with how these young guys perform. Like I do think Evan Carter may have some growing pains, but I think in the second half he could be a monster. He might not even have some, sophomore, it's still his rookie year, but like second stint adjustment. If he doesn't, then you feel really good. But then throwing a Langford in there who has the upside to be a 3-win, 4-win player in his rookie year, being able to
30
have some of these
homers.
other guys, these young guys also continue to mature and in a Josh Young and even Nathaniel Lowe, the way he was able to kind of, I think, really capture the good spurts that he had before and finish that way too. Like there's a lot of interesting pieces here. So yeah, I don't know exactly what the value of Ezekiel Duran is because it's tough. But if you make a somewhat of a larger deal there, and the general swap on the big league side is Duran for Scott, like I think that does help hedge some of the uncertainty with the rotation in the first half. Where if your bullpen's nails, then you can get by with a shaky rotation up until a lot of those exciting arms come back.
And that bullpen with a new closer is way better than it was last year. And I
Oh
would
yeah,
consider that in the nails category.
and just kind of the closer by committee situation where you can have
Yeah.
Scott close sometimes. He can also come in the eighth if there's lefties, up front there, and then Spores closes it out or Leclerc closes it out. Like I like the ability to have three different guys that could come in and shut it down, but Scott could kind of be the de facto closer for them.
Yeah. All right, let's do Seattle quick. The Seattle Mariners, they've got about $100 million to work with. Their estimated payroll right now, when you take in arbitration, pre-arbitration estimates, is $136 million. Again, CBT 237. So they're $101 million shy of that. They lost Teoscar Hernandez to free agency, Tom Murphy to free agency, Dominic Leone, and Mike Ford. I don't think you're missing the last two, but you do lose your backup catcher and a corner outfielder that you gave up a decent bid for. The move so far, they traded Isaiah Campbell to Boston for Luis Urias, who's now been DFA'd twice. They dumped salary, moving Eugenio Suarez to Arizona for Carlos Vargas, who could factor into their bullpen, and Sebi Zavala, who takes over for Tom Murphy as the backup catcher. Then they traded Jared Kelnick, Marco Gonzalez, and Evan White to Atlanta for Jackson Kowar and Cole Phillips. That was a money dump as well. As it stands right now, catching tandem, Cal Raleigh and Sebi Zavala. They acquire Blake Hunt as well, who is like the third catcher / the starter in Tacoma. Feel fine enough with that. You hope Raleigh catches 130 games, right?
Yeah, I mean that's your guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't really that's gonna be one of the less utilized backups out there. I think.
I think so. Ty France at first base. Second base is kind of a whole bunch of C plus, maybe C. Josh Rojas, Jose Caballero, Sam Haggerty, Dylan Moore, Luis Urias at third base. Those two got to get fixed quick. Quick.
Yeah,
JP
yeah.
Crawford's the shortstop. Bliss is the backup. Like, I think Bliss can be the second baseman.
I think Bliss can be, but that's still like he didn't perform very well offensively in the Arizona Fall League, which is probably the situation where they were kind of hoping he could instill more confidence in them, penciling him in for 2024. So that part of it's interesting. And then you look at like I think there's a lot of positions that they need to look at. And the craziest thing is, I mean, right now we're at the point where Ty France, like we should be looking to potentially upgrade over Ty France, but there's other positions that they need to legitimately just fill in at this point
Yeah.
to be able to be competitive. And I'm under the assumption still, like I know that they're clearly slashing payroll, and Jeff Passon's alluded to it in terms of like he feels bad for Mariner fans. But my question is, are they not going to reinvest some of it? I feel like they have to reinvest some of that. And I know we've seen some reports linking guys like Reese Hoskins to them, and I'm looking at first base targets. That makes a lot of sense, but they also just need outfield bats. Like, how much confidence do you have in Cade Marlowe and Dominic Canzone? Are those going to be your two corner outfield bats? There's no
Can't
way.
be. Can't
And
be.
then at third, so those are three of the most important offensive positions: left field, right field, third base, and then first base. So you could say four. And I mean, the best option out of all of those is Ty France, who really, was underwhelming last year at first base. We could talk about second base, but honestly, I'm more concerned about the fact that you look at roster resource right now, you got Taylor Trammell in the DH spot, which is probably not going to happen. You got Canzone in right field. You got Marlowe in left. Also give me league average offense. I'm okay with that. I'm more concerned about the corners here, where Gurriel, as you mentioned, was probably one of their better options. Now he's not available. I know that there's been rumors about Reese Hoskins being an option, but again, that doesn't really totally answer the situation here. Like, where else are you looking? Are you looking at a TA on a bounce back and stick him at third? Like what can you possibly do if you're not going to spend with the best of them and you're somewhat limited? I think a Tommy Pham makes sense
Yeah.
in a corner,
But like
but
that's not fun, man. They were so close. Like put yourself over the edge. And we got so excited because we thought that they were gonna make a real go at Juan Soto. We thought that they were gonna make a go at Jung Hoo Lee. And all of a sudden, Soto's off the board, Lee's off the board, and now Gurriel's off the board too. How do you do this? And I don't know how they downscale and don't have any plan at getting attainable pieces that are upgrades. And the one that
yeah.
still jumps out to me is Isaac Paredes. Like, if that guy's still available, you do everything in your power to do that. And then you just add Luis Arias to the second base turnstile that now becomes four, at hell, five, with Arias, Rojas, Caballero, Moore, Haggerty.
I think it has to be a trade. And then I think there needs to be one free agent signing in there too.
Yeah.
I like, they're already lefty heavy regardless, but whoever you sign, not lefty heavy, but in the roster resource at this present moment, it's lefty heavy. But whoever you sign is going to plug in for one of those lefties in Canzone, Marlowe, or Trammell. I think you got to go get Jock Peterson. West Coast helps, right? He's staying on the West Coast there. You go get Jock. I think that's within the, hey, we trimmed the payroll enough this year where they're still saving compared to where they were before. I mean, they've cleared like $40 million almost worth of money for next year. Go pay a Jock Peterson, who's going to obviously be a fan favorite in a lot of ways, and I do think gives them some important power there as well. And then I think you go make a trade for Paredes. I think those are the two moves that make the most sense. You need a right-handed bat, I think, if you're going to go get a left-handed bat as well to kind of even things out. And you got Paredes at third. You add Jock Peterson there. All of a sudden, this offense looks a lot more solid, and I think you can feel a lot more confident about what you got going for you there.
What do you think the price of Paredes is? Do you think it's one of the starters? Do you think it's Miller or Wu?
I think that the Rays are going to try for that. How many years of control is Paredes again? Is it 2?
No, I think it's 4.
4. Yeah, then it's going to be one of those guys. It's going to be a Wu. It's going to be
I'll
It's
tell
going
you
to be
right
one of
now.
those key guys. And the problem is I don't love Paredes overall as a fit in Seattle because he's not a guy that's going to hit moon tanks, right?
It's a deep left,
It's
yeah.
get into pull side homers that I think it translates in a lot of places, but it could potentially not translate the same way in Seattle.
So he's a super 2 guy. So he's got 4 years of control, but all 4 arbitration years. His ARB estimate on Spotrac right now is 4.1. So that would be the starting point. So it's 4, and you add.
So
So you don't
that
get
would
year
negate the
instead of 40.
value a little bit. It would. And I'm just wondering if, maybe it does take a Woo, but could they piece together a package with Hancock instead and make it happen potentially?
We just can't answer for Tampa because we don't know if they even like Hancock. You know what I mean? Like other teams, I think we can immediately pencil in Hancock as a headliner, but with Tampa, They may just not like what he does. He's not a
Yeah.
data darling.
Yeah. By the way, I will just admit to yapping here because he, according to Baseball Savant, would have had 28 home runs in Seattle. So it
Yeah,
just
but he
seems
had
to,
30 in Tampa. So
yeah, that's fair enough. But like he would have had nine in Baltimore. So like
really?
if it's, yeah, so if it's not like a huge drop off, that's perfectly fine then. So maybe he is a decent fit. It's a really unique profile. But
Speaking,
yeah,
hey,
assuming they
real
don't
quick.
love Hancock. Sorry.
No, real quick. Speaking of getting fucked by Baltimore, Ryan Mountcastle could be a nice fit in Seattle.
He could, he could be a good fit there, but that's not a bad option. I just, are they ever going to actually make that trade? And think about, I mean, the pitching that they'd be giving up, that does make sense. They could go get a Mountcastle, and Hancock would almost be too much. I think Mountcastle's pretty low cost in terms of an acquisition. But then, are you putting him at DH? Are you putting him at first base and then Ty France DHs? Like, what's the situation there?
I don't know. I mean, just grab two DH caliber bats. They need another DH caliber bat.
Yeah. So trade for Mountcastle,
Yeah, why
trade for
not?
Paredes.
Fuck. Did the, you don't so you think that Mountcastle for Hancock straight up is an overpay on Seattle's end?
I think it can be because I think Mountcastle can be very good, but he's obviously dealt with like some weird injuries, whether it was like the vertigo and then physical injuries and things like that. He is a little bit limited defensively, but he did still turn in a 780 OPS last year, and
He
he
was one of the
comes with,
best. He might have been the best hitter in baseball against left-handed pitching too. He OPS'd well over 1,000.
which is a good balance for them, and he comes with control with these,
Three
yeah,
years.
24, 25, 26. Yeah, actually, I don't think that's an overpay at all. I think I for whatever reason thought he only came with like 1 or 2 years, 2 more years of control.
Oh man.
So I mean, if you throw in Hancock and maybe another piece, I think you can pull that off. It's not like there's a lot of teams, you know, trying to knock down their door for
For
Ryan
Ryan.
Mountcastle, and Hancock could help that rotation this coming season. He's not established, but I don't think you're getting an established young arm for Mountcastle. So yeah, let's say Hancock in a prospect,
Okay.
and then do you still go for Paredes if you do that?
No.
You say no.
I say no.
And what do you do at third?
I think you just roll
I don't
with
think Ty France can play there, can he?
no, I think you just roll with what you got, which sucks.
That's it.
I
You're
think you
done.
roll with some sort of turnstile. I mean, you sign Jock, but then I think you roll with the turnstile of Rojas, Urias, can Dylan Moore hop over there?
You could try. I mean, he hasn't played much third base in the last
Or
few years. You could try Ty France at third.
or you say yes to Blake Snell's pleas to be a Seattle Mariner, and then you do trade Brian Wu for Isaac Paredes.
Yeah. Or even aim higher than that. So, but it just seems so unrealistic that they're going to do that now at this point.
I
It
don't
just
think they do it.
No, with the way that Passan's saying, like, I feel bad for them. Like, I don't think he feels that very optimistic that they're going to go out and spend unless something just like totally changes. I have a feeling he has a pretty good pulse on where ownership's at there right now. So I think you trade for Mountcastle. His offense will tick up just being out of there because he likes to get into a pull side. And that's obviously the worst place to be.
Yeah.
Then yeah, I get like, you're going to, so who's playing third for you opening day?
Urias
It's the
probably.
Mariners. Oh,
I know.
jeez.
It's not fun. There's only
That's
so
it though.
much you yeah. And sign Jock.
Sign Jock, trade for Mountcastle, and call it right there.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. It's sad, man.
What's interesting here, here's my last question though. You have Castillo, Gilbert, Kirby, Miller, and Wu. Then you're going to return Robbie Ray at some point in the middle of the season.
Hmm.
I guess you just cross that bridge when you get there. If you guys are performing well, I mean, you guys being the Mariners, then you could go make that Wu trade or go make that Miller trade.
Sure.
He says maybe don't do it before you know when Ray's going to come back and all that good stuff.
That's my thing because if you do trade Hancock and then you trade Wu as well, who's your five?
Yeah, you don't have a five.
You don't have one.
Yeah. Yeah, you really don't have a reliable one, at least that's for sure.
Jackson Coar. Yeah, shit. I don't want to
Yeah,
do
okay,
that.
I'm good. I'm good. So that's it. We're gonna get them. I mean, I love the Jock fit, I really do. And
Yeah.
then I don't think they go get it Arias if they weren't kind of wondering if they were
Doomsday.
actually going to go get a third baseman. So yeah, I like that. At the end of the day, that does make them a lot more balanced offensively. And you get a lefty masher, you get a righty masher
Yeah.
in Mountcastle and Peterson, and you don't touch that rotation. And then if Ray comes back and looks good, then push the chips forward, trade Woo or Miller, and go get a stud. Go get somebody that can really make a difference for you.
Yeah. Bullpen, I don't think you need to do anything with the Seattle bullpen. It's good year over year, maybe a different cast of characters, but don't care. Andres Munoz is one of the best relievers in baseball. Matt Brash looks nasty as a setup guy. You got Topa, Spire, Thornton, Saucedo. Like, you're good. Prelander Baroa is waiting as well. Vargas is waiting as well. Ty Adcock. Like, there's so much depth there. They can figure out five guys that are going to work.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see, Jackson Coard, the reliever, maybe.
Hmm.
Maybe that fastball, it's not great shape, but maybe it ticks up to the upper 90s and maybe that changeup plays up a little bit more too. Maybe the slider plays up a little bit more. Maybe he's better as a reliever. It didn't really work too well last year as a reliever, but and maybe change the scenery, another chance out of the bullpen. See how it all looks.
Yep. All right. So the lineup that we just put together for them: Cal Raleigh catching. You want Mountcastle or France playing first base?
I Whoever grades up better match. I think they're both like kind of
Yeah.
defensively, but
All right. France at
we'll
first.
keep France at first.
Yeah. So Raleigh catching, France at first. Josh Rojas at second. JP Crawford at short. Luis Arias at third. Jock Peterson in left or Peterson in right?
Think Peterson and left.
Okay. So Peterson in left. Julio in center. Either Cade Marlowe, Taylor Trammell, or Dominic Canzone in right.
I hate that they're all lefties.
I know. I know, but like, it's all right.
But
Whatever.
then you can plug Mountcastle in the outfield against a lefty
Occasionally. Yeah.
occasionally, and then who's de-aging for you then?
Maybe you just have Caballero, DH,
Yeah, or yeah, jeez, man.
Haggerty, Dylan Moore. So yeah, one of those guys in right field, and then the bench is Sebi Zavala, Caballero, Haggerty, Dylan Moore, and then the rotation stays the exact same right now. You can flip Miller or Wu for a good third baseman at the deadline when Robbie Ray comes back healthy, and that bullpen no change either. So
No.
it's still disappointing. I'm still more pessimistic about them now than I was at the beginning of the 2023 season.
Yeah.
Having said that, for a team that's shedding a bunch of payroll, that's probably the best we can do.
Yeah, and I think the value of the exercise is there's just a couple pieces can still make them, pretty solid contenders. It can't look like that from 5 onward. And, I would love to see them push the chips forward a little bit more. I'd love to see them maybe look at a Soler and plug him at the DH spot. But I just think what he's going to cost won't be justifiable for them, considering that they're cutting guys like Gino and just that weren't even that expensive. So I think that's probably the most likely scenario, but they could do something a little bit more inspiring, and that would be nice. But Jock would be a really good get for them, and I think it's a good fit overall. And Mountcastle has the potential to hit you 30 plus. If Jock is playing like Jock and Mountcastle hits you 30 plus, this team could be better than it was last year because the guys that we thought could do that last year didn't do that for them. And Teoscar and some of the other pieces that we were hoping would make more of an impact, even a Colton Wong.
Yeah, but it's almost like you have to spend money to be good.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, you can't spend all of your money and win a championship, but you definitely need to spend money to get above I guess the line of
The
mediocrity.
75 win marker. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they've done that. Now that's just off of what they've built. Now spend to put yourselves over the top. And I hope they do that because Seattle fans deserve better than what they're currently prepared to put out on the field on opening day, which I know it'll be better than this.
Yeah. We got a taste. Like, I just want them to commit to it. And if you can't commit to it right now with that pitching staff, I don't know when you do commit to it, but it's a conversation for another day, I guess. Aram, Jack, every link you need is in the episode description. Go get your merch. I think we're planning a nice little flash sale right before the holidays, which is going to be great. So we've got a bunch of hoodies that must go. So if you don't have a Just Baseball hoodie or a shirt, you have your chance to get one at a really solid price point. Every other link you need, again, is in our episode description, in our link tree, and we will talk to you on Wednesday.